What's up, everyone, and welcome to yet another instalment of the Just an Insight podcast. We are now on episode number 4, so I haven't given up just yet. For those newcomers and those of you who do not know me, my name is Tim Birkbeck. I am a writer, I am a lover of films, music and wrestling. But the most important thing is I am your body and vehicle guiding you through this podcast. As always, I like to start these episodes with a little roundup of my week that has gone by. Not sure if anyone cares, but I like to tell you guys anyway. So I had a pretty busy week just gone. Had a few press nights with work and pleasure. Starting out with going to see Jim Davidson live in Basingstoke for work. And he was exactly how you'd imagine he is. That's all I'm going to say about that. Then I went and saw the musical version of The Commitments at the Mayflower in Southampton. And if you're into that type of thing, I definitely recommend going to check it out. For nothing else, for the appearance of the manic skinhead Mika, who is just incredible. He comes out of left field and completely stole the show. Then rounding off my week, I went and saw a Star Wars themed metal band called Galactic Empire at the Joiners, and they were just absolutely phenomenal. Came out of that show with a massive grin on my face from ear to ear. If you want to read the review of that, you can read it on the Just an Insight website, which is justaninsight.wordpress.com. Also, I spent my weekend catching up on all things New Japan Pro Wrestling, because I haven't really watched anything of theirs since Wrestle Kingdom. Keep seeing things flash up, so I thought, got the weekend off, going to delve right in. And I'm going to take a leaf from fellow podcaster, host of the Tuesday Night Jaws, Jim Smallman, by saying Los Unpronounceables are hands down the best thing about wrestling right now. But yeah, again, if you're a fan of wrestling, check out New Japan, and they're doing some awesome things. And shout out to UK talent Will Ospreay, who him and Shibata are just doing incredible storytelling at the moment. So really looking forward to seeing how that's going. Anyway, enough about me. On to today's episode. Today I had a chat with Paul Waller, who is the vocalist for Kent-based doom band OHHMS. They're one of the bands who kind of sprung out of nowhere for me. They I saw them they were one of those bands that you saw on flyers everywhere. You saw your posters, saw your t-shirts, but I never actually checked them out. But I saw them at Temples Fest, not last year because obviously it didn't happen, but the year before, and they were awesome, and I've kind of been keeping tabs on them ever since. So it was really nice to speak to Paul. Got to speak to him about their new album, The Fall, and just like how the doom scene at the moment is just doing nuts things. Obviously, you've got bands like Monolithian, Bosk, Slab Dragger, just to name a few. After we recorded this episode, OHHMS actually aired the first track off their new record, which is titled The Wild, on the Radio 1 Rock show, which Paul mentions in the show. He says obviously it's coming up, but that's obviously already happened, so please bear that in mind when you're listening to this episode. Anyway, that being said, enjoy episode 4 of the Just an Insight podcast, and I will see you guys on the other side. We all get going. Right, cool. So I'm currently joined by Paul from OHHMS. How's it going, Paul?
Yeah, it's good. I'm at home, finished work, and that's very good.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Literally just rushed in the door, grabbed something to eat, and then thought I'd give you a quick call. So yeah, it's been one of those days for me, unfortunately. But yeah, obviously just wanted to have a discussion about the band, and kind of one of the things that I always like to do in these interviews is just kind of get an insight of how the band started. So how did OHHMS come about?
For a while I was a journalist. During my sort of teenage years and early 20s, I was in a hardcore band, and it sort of got really burnt out on it after a few years. So I became a journalist because music's my passion.
Yeah.
And I did a few interviews that were so inspiring, and they were telling me, the people I was interviewing were just saying, you should, if that's your dream, you should follow it. And so I called the guys that I knew that were musicians locally that weren't in bands, and they were all up for it. So yeah, that's how we joined. Simple as that. A phone call.
What sort of journalism were you doing out of interest?
Just interviews with bands and reviewing records. It's for I still do it actually. I do reviews for Penny Black Music, and they're based in Edinburgh.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sort of like one of their rock guys. They got a few rock guys, and I'm one of their rock guys.
And as you said, obviously in a band previously, so did that kind of give you sort of onus to know what you wanted to do going into doing OHHMS?
It really did, yeah. There's, as I say, I got a bit jaded, and it was because we were with hardcore and like the way that sort of the bands at us, it's a very DIY approach, and doing everything myself. You tend to have one guy in a band that does the main body of work, and as you get more successful, it takes over your life. And I know it's a bit of a bummer sometimes after year you're doing it constantly, and it is one of those things that I sort of knew the pitfalls when coming into this, and when I spoke to the guys, I asked them if they would be able to share the load, and that's how we operate.
And you kind of mentioned it there, but one of the things that I've kind of read about you guys is that other bands have kind of always praised your kind of work ethic, and obviously you've found a balance throughout the band now, but obviously my first sort of observation of you guys was I think before even you had any music out. So has that kind of been the OHHMS ethic, so to say, as you've hit the ground running and just gone with it?
Yeah, well, we decided from the offset that as soon as we did get signed, which was a complete surprise, we knew the guy Alex would be at one of our shows, and it was like that would be amazing if he signed us, sort of thing. And the fact that it happened was a shocker. But at that moment, the next following week, sort of thing, we said let's take it as far and as seriously as we can. And before then, it was just meant to be a project for fun. But yeah, you wouldn't believe how quickly things took off. I mean, with regards to our song lengths, they're so long. It was one of those things that we had more T-shirts than songs. And so people would like see these OHHMS T-shirts about, and then just like, who are they, sort of thing. And then when they did find out, it's like, oh, they've got 2 songs and 4 T-shirts. Yeah, so weird. But yeah, we take it a lot more seriously than I have any other endeavour that I've done, that's for sure.
And did you not know Alex prior to them signing to Holy Roar then?
Yeah, I did, but not personally. I knew him in a journalist capacity. I've followed Holy Roar for years, and I interviewed him. He can't remember it at all, but I interviewed him just because I love the label. And when we were thinking, right, should we send this off to people to see what they would think? Because we were quite happy with the way the recording turned out. So we all chose a couple of labels each that we loved. None of us thought that Holy Roar would be interested. And then when like all the other labels got back, it's just saying, yeah, I like the music, but the vocals are crap, or the opposite. It was one of those things, well, let's just try as a last resort. Let's try Alex. Let's see what he says. And he loved it from the off.
And obviously, since then, you've kind of worked with him closely on other releases, and obviously the new record that's coming out is going to be on Holy Roar again. So what can kind of people who are not necessarily familiar with OHHMS and people that are, what can they expect from the new record?
It's well, I have to mention that our songs have been pretty long, so we've done those 2 EPs so far. Like each one's 2 songs and just over half hour each. So with the new one, it's odd. We didn't think about it when we started recording and like working the songs up, but a few of them were a lot shorter. compared to most other bands, they're still ridiculously long. But yeah, so we've got a short song now. It's like 5.5 minutes, which is just mad for us. And then we've got our longest song on there as well. The themes though have sort of jetted off a bit. We were initially just singing about food and being vegetarian or cruelty to animals, that sort of thing. That's the sort of thing that was turning us on, and also about GMO ingredients and things like that. Just an odd aspect to go for, which initially was meant to be purely sort of a doom band. This one, things turned a bit more sort of social, political, and political. And it was an odd turn of events. But at the same time, it's really exciting to do new things. And so far, so good. That we're so happy with how it's all turned out. Don't know what people are going to think of the shorter songs if they've liked us because of our long ones. But, you know, you got to do what's true.
Yeah, of course. And you kind of touched upon it there. Obviously, the message that you kind of put across on songs, again, when I first got introduced to your music, something that really stood out to me was the whole sort of animal cruelty thing, because I'm a vegetarian myself. Right. So that kind of stood out to me. So was that, have you always kind of wanted to portray a certain message through your music?
I really have. One of those conversations when I was a journalist that I found really inspiring was with guys from Crass and also Michael from Swans, and it was profound what they were talking to me about, and especially with Crass, there was we were really getting into animal rights, and at the time I was a meat eater, and it just made me think, and I just thought, if I am going to do a band again, you've got to be honest with yourself and just write what you not just happy with, but you've got to sing it every night. You've got to believe it. You've got to be passionate, or else if you're singing about something you're not passionate about, if you're singing about goblins and witches and you're not someone that's well into goblins and witches, then it's going to seem a bit crap on stage. And maybe that's the hardcore influence from our past, because we're all sort of raised in the hardcore scene. But yeah, it's a passion. And one of us, the drummer Max, he's a meat eater, and he said the other day in practice, he just said one of the weird things, I've never been asked about it. People always will say after a show and stuff, talk to us about animal rights and whatnot, and that's great fun. But Max is just nodding his head. Yeah, no one's ever mentioned or asked him his opinion, which is strange.
Yeah, and kind of backpedaling a little bit, going back to the relationship that you've got with Holy Raw. Obviously, you played the 10-year anniversary show, and you're also playing their 420 Fest. So, is it good to have someone that's got such faith in you that they're willing to invest in your music, and not just that, but push you in the limelight almost?
Yeah, are you kidding? It's incredible. It's weird. I'll give you a couple of instances. It was that show where they signed us. We played the show at the Black Heart in London, and Alex said, "All right, I'll come along." We chatted during the day, and he said, "I really like it, but I've got to see you first." And I said, "Come along, we're playing tonight. It's in London." He came along, and by the end of the show, he was gone. And I was like, "Oh, great," no. And then I looked. We went downstairs to get a drink, sort of just bury our heads, and well, never mind. It was a good shot. And there he is, telling the barmaid that she's just missed the most amazing band upstairs. And that was what? And then later that night on the way home, he tweeted that he's just seen like his the favourite UK band and things like that. I was just like, oh my word. And then another thing that happened just yesterday is like some of the new T-shirt designs for this new record. Holy Roar do like this pre-sale thing, and they give you exclusive T-shirts and stuff. And they showed me the design, and I like to okay it. And I was like, well, no, can we put the Holy Roar logo on there somewhere? And they were like chuffed about that we think that way about them. So it's a really great relationship, and it's a dream come true being on Holy War, basically.
And again, you've kind of hit what I was going to ask next. Is another thing that's really prominent in you as a band is your visuals, and as you said, like before, when you released music, you had kind of more merch than you did tracks. So who kind of comes up with the visuals for the band, and why do you put so much emphasis on that?
Well, that sort of goes back to when I first got into Godspeed You Black Emperor, and I was pretty much impressed with the music, but more impressed with the amount of effort they put into their art and how it was presented and the whole ethos of the band. It was something that I'd never thought of before, until like there it was in front of me with this amazing group of people. So when it came around to doing like this conversation, let's do things properly, Max, our drummer, is really keen on it as well. It's like, let's present the band visually how we would feel the first time we saw that Godspeed album or whatever. So I think we've picked a couple of designers that we were really happy with, and we save our wages to pay for the works. And we've chosen one particular guy, Nico, who lives in Italy. He does black sails design, and he, as long as he incorporates animals into the designs, we're more than happy with whatever he sends us. And one of the things I wanted to do was a very long-winded sort of process with this new album is tarot cards. So each month we commissioned him to send us, because we're pretty poor, one tarot card per month. So he would design a tarot card, send it over, we'd okay it, and then the next month there'd be another one. And this was for a set of 22, so it went on for 22 months. So, our vision was really clear that long ago for what we wanted for this. And to get that final one through, and just to look back at that set of tarot cards that come with this record, was incredible. His artwork blows us away.
It's weird, because he's one of those guys that I remember seeing kind of his work back in like the early 2000s when he did, I think it was Gold Kids or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's in Gold Kids.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
Yeah, think so. And like it's still awesome to see like his work now on almost like a different kind of genre, but it's still so prominent that that's his work, kind of thing.
He's very distinctive, and unlike a lot of artists that are awesome that we can use, he hasn't been used up. Do you know what I mean? Like, you go to his show and you don't see a lot of. I think Upriver have used him a few times, another Holy Roar band. But really, you don't see a lot of his work in this country, which for us is great, because it's sort of like it's something special to us. Saying that, this interview, probably everyone's going to go, okay, we'll use him. But yeah, he's a great guy as well. He's like really communicative, and it's something you really need. If you need something that's done that day, you really want someone that's going to reply, and he always does, and we're really grateful for that too.
And as you mentioned kind of with the tarot cards and sort of what you wanted to perceive aesthetically, it kind of sounds like your process as a band is quite methodical. And does that kind of come across in your writing process? Because, as you say, some of your song lengths are sort of 10 minutes plus. So how do you shape a song, so to say?
Lyrically, it can come either from something I've written when there's no music, which has happened a couple of times, and we've sort of like I've tried to fit it into what they've written. But the majority of the time, they'll come up with riffs, shape them into sort of segments, and then it'll make me straight away think of something to write about. I've only ever been stuck once, and it was for a song that's on this record, and it was the last minute that we got the lyrics, and it's worrying because the song was like 18 minutes long. So it's like, I've got to write 18 minutes worth of lyrics. But yeah, it worked in the end. But it's weird because everything was related to tarot cards. So if I had a subject that I was passionate about and wanted to write about, I would then have to adapt it to the tarot, which is weird because it's something that I've only just in the last couple of years sort of reading up on, and it worked, but I don't know how well. We'll soon find out what people.
There kind of seems to be, in the UK especially, like a resurgence in kind of like doom, progressive and droney kind of music. Obviously, bands like yourselves, Slabdragger, Conan, Bosk being at the heart of that. Have you seen like more people kind of coming to your shows and being interested in your music in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I would say yeah, but I think that's purely because, like, as a band over years, you grow bigger. The great thing was I was going to shows of those bands before we started, and the great thing is like looking at the audience now, as you're seeing T-shirts of all those bands, and I know members of all those bands, and I played with all those bands, and it's dead exciting. And there is a few, in my opinion, a few that have broken away from the glut of the hundreds that there is. And I don't know if it's popularity for me that they've broken away in popularity, because a lot of them aren't that popular. But it's like when you do something slightly different, something slightly off kilter from what's expected, that really excites me. That's what we're passionate about is that although we are lumped in with this in the same scenes, for instance, all those bands you mentioned, they do something slightly different from every other band within that scene, and that's why you've name checked them. That's why they're exciting. That's why they've got an audience. Is that you can tell they're being honest, and it's passion that drives them.
Kind of on the same thing as you say, everyone's kind of got their little differences, but from just looking at sort of different lineups and different kind of festivals and things like that, you always kind of yourselves do seem to always kind of get put on bills with Slabdragger, Conan, and etc. So does that annoy you, or is it nice to kind of just play with those bands?
It's great. With those bands, and I'm sure they feel exactly the same way. It'd be great to break away and venture into other things. I know Conan have that they're big enough now to be able to get on bills with massive bands, and sort of the Iron Maidens and things at festivals, and that's great. So that's, as a band, that's what we aim for. I want to personally expand our audience, but I don't want to alienate the audience that we've already got. I mean, if we get a tour, for instance, with Bosk, then I'm dead excited about that. And fair enough, our fans may be, I say fans, people that like our music, might be the exact same people that like their music. But at the same time, so what? You know, that's great. And hopefully, you know, people that like us would not have heard of Bosk and then find Bosk, and vice versa. It's one of those things that I reckon I would love to do it, but you got to be offered it. And we tried with this European tour that we've got coming up. We tried to get shows with other bands of other ilks, just to see what it's like to play in front of other audiences. But it's difficult. Promoters don't really want to book it. Like with this recent European tour, again, promoters are not keen to put you with a band. Let's say, like for us to go with a band like Black Peaks or something, it just, promoters would not be happy with it at all. And I don't know. We're not willing to adapt our music to fit in with other styles of bands. We just play what naturally comes to us. And if people pick us up and promoters pick us up and say, well, do you mind playing on the bill? Then we'll say, yeah, we'll play whatever. Yeah, it's tricky. As I say, I would love to do it, but we got to be offered it.
Yeah, and because I remember I've read somewhere previously is that obviously with your kind of music, it is an acquired taste, but as you say, you want to play with those other types of bands. So is it about kind of winning over a new audience and opening them up to what OHHMS is?
I think so. I think that the thing that makes us a little bit different is we've got clean vocals for the majority of the time. At least 95% of the vocals are clean, and you can understand the words. And also, like, there's a lot of melody in there. There's a lot of earworming, and that's great, you know. And it's really tricky to do that with a 22-minute song. And it's something that I really work on. I've got a massive love of pop music and or 80s and 70s pop, and it really crosses over into the melodic way I write. Whereas Max will have his interests are more in off kilter and acute noise and things like that. So with all these different things, I just wonder sometimes how anyone likes us. Like, how can you get into a band that's so strange? And we do demand a lot. Just to listen to a song which goes from one thing to another and still sort of all ties in. It's a big ask, and I'm glad people have done it. But I'd say, we'll see with the new record. I don't know.
Yeah, and because you've brought it up, I've got to ask, what are the pop influences then?
Oh, it might be embarrassing to say, but definitely Simon Le Bon. His singing style, although it's really nasally, the way he phrases incredibly well, and I love it. There's so many. I think I've said this before, but with mid-era Duran Duran, sort of up to Notorious, and after the first album, I rip so much of that stuff off. It's ridiculous. But yeah, it's just little things. Prince I've ripped off so many times, just like little vocal tweaks here and there. And for the harmonies, it's been a lot. We watched a documentary on tour, a Beach Boys documentary, and it's singled out the way they do harmonies. And then in the van the next day, we were all like trying to harmonise and like, and that's worked out. So we've included that in there. So all these sort of things like spring up from like just a love of pop music, but at the same time, you know, we're not pop music. It's weird.
And obviously, you mentioned kind of bands like Conan and things going off to do like big festivals and things like that. And you've played a couple of festivals yourselves,
Yeah.
but which do you prefer playing on, like the bigger stages, or do you prefer the more kind of intimate shows where you're kind of in the face of the crowd almost?
I think I'm the only one of the five of us that prefers the big shows. Yeah, they're a bit strange about it. They're, yeah, I'll give you an example. Like at Arc Tangent, we were on the main stage. We were sort of bumped up, and I was so proper excited about it. We were originally playing at the small stage, sort of in a corner somewhere, and then someone pulled out, and we were invited to play the main stage. Awesome. So I was set up, just ready to go, because I just want to be heard by as many people as possible. And sort of Cheney was like, just before we went on, Cheney, our bass player, he was making excuses. So like, he's like, I'm just going to go to the toilet. And I was like, well, they called us to play. And and then we just saw him like weeing against the fence. It's like, what are you doing? It's like we're 5 minutes late now. And he goes, oh, I'll be there in a minute. You can tell like from that, it's like, it's not nervousness, but it's like he's not keen on it. And it's like the other guys, they prefer those in your face shows. Like you mentioned the 10th anniversary show, one. And there was two stages to that. There was a massive stage and there was a smaller stage, and we were playing the smaller. Those guys were made up, and I think that was the perfect size for them. And at one point, I remember someone in the front row singing the song back at us, and I saw Cheney's face at the time. He was so made up about it, and so I totally see why he prefers that, or they prefer that sort of thing. But yeah, for me, as many people as possible, I'm happy to play in front of as many as I can.
So is that the main reason you like playing the bigger stages, because you've got a wider audience, or is it a case of that it feels grander almost?
It's a bit of both. You know, it's probably a lot cooler to say that, it's just the small stages or whatever, and that, you know, to be one with the audience. But I love doing that, and I love playing the big ones. It's just I prefer the bigger ones. I prefer to be able to look back like that Temple show we played, and like I can't see the end. That was awesome, you know, and like to have people up the stairs, like and just trying to catch a glimpse of you. Like we've all been in a situation where we've tried to see bands, but maybe you haven't, but I'm so short that if I'm not in the front row, I can't see anything. And there was people like jumping up and down trying to see us and stuff, and I loved that. That's awesome. For me, it's great. And like we've played a few overseas as well, like festivals. Still sort of mid-range festivals, like 1,500 to 2,000 people, but love it, absolutely love it, and I want to play more. For sure.
And kind of on the flip, obviously the tour you've got coming up next month, it's kind of going the opposite way, that you're playing these smaller venues again. So what was the reasoning behind to do like a smaller run shows, and is there any particular shows that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, it's going to make me out to be a complete liar now, but yeah, that whole thing was my idea. I asked the management if they could sort out a tour where we were playing places that we hadn't played before, which inevitably means it's going to be smaller places. Like I think we've got Coventry and Basingstoke we haven't been before, and even though Swansea's like a city, we've never been there before. So it's just like anywhere that we haven't played before. And there was a few that they couldn't fill with places we haven't played, so we decided to play the smaller places we had played before. And I'm glad that Mammoth Weed, the band we're touring with, were happy to do that as well. because I really want to see them on every night because I love their records so much. But they were cool with it, and yeah, it's just one of those things that like when bands get to a certain size, and you know, we're not big in any way, shape or form, but we can play slightly bigger venues now. But before we do that, and we've got loads of them shows lined up for later in the year, so that was cool. But we all had a look at our again, we all work, so we all had a look at when we're not working, and this week was a week where we could all go out on tour, so we said, let's do it. So yeah, on the phone, organised it, and management said we're happy to organise it. So that's great. We can play all these places we've never played, meet new people. Yeah, what's not to love about that?
And you mentioned, obviously, you've got kind of some of the bigger shows lined up for later on in the year.
Yeah.
But have you got any other sort of particular plans at the moment?
Yeah, well, this weekend, Sunday, is going to be, which depends when you listen to this, so probably not, but this coming weekend, we've got our first song being aired on Radio 1 of the new record, which is going to be exciting, and hopefully get some feedback from people, what they think about it, maybe from yourself. But yeah, so that's exciting. So we've got that coming up, and then with the tours, they're going to be announced next week. So maybe by the time this goes out, that they'll be announced. But there's bands that we've mentioned already tonight that we're going on tour with, and there's other bands that we're not mentioned that we're going on tour with, and there's a few festivals lined up as well. We're going to Sweden and Denmark, places we've not been before, and just to be offered those things, that's just amazing. Like honestly, when I was in the hardcore bands back in the day, it's just like to sort out like a week in Europe was madness. It was doing my head in, and then for people now to just contact us and say, "Can you play this? We'll pay for you to get there," you know, and all that sort of like, yeah, we'll do that. It's the best feeling in the world, and I love it. Do that. it's the best feeling in the world, and I love it.
Ironically, I've kind of been in that boat because the band I'm in, we're looking to go over to mainland Europe some point this year, and as you say, it's just a nightmare trying to get people to even listen to your band. So kudos to you guys for getting people to offer it to you.
It's only just started to happen. Yeah, it's one of those things that it just, as you said earlier, as long as you are like, what I find is that the first year is a write-off. If you've not got like money going into the band, then forget about it. You've got to play for nothing or very little. Sometimes you don't even get enough for petrol. I reckon you just got to pummel it and just get out there and just be as passionate and as good as you can be. And after that year, if you are still into it and friends as a band, then everything pretty much then is plain sailing. I think don't you find that? I just think if you go for it in that first year, if you can stick together and still be friends, then pretty much everything else has got to be easy.
Oh yeah, definitely. I totally agree. Paul, last sort of question. Well, it's not really a question, but just to sort of round everything off. Is there anything else that you particularly like to say or like to plug about the band?
Again, I just want to talk about or just mention these tarot cards. As I say, I'm so happy with them. We got the final ones the final one to come through about a month ago, and I've been really, I don't know the word, but so keen for people to just finally look at them, because as I say, this artwork is something that was just blowing me away bit by bit, and I've been, for 2 years, I've not been able to show people it.
Yeah.
It's been hard, but so each day we're putting some on Instagram now, and there'll be a reveal of them all in a couple of weeks on Facebook, and then with the pre-orders, as I say, you can buy packs. So even if you're not particularly into the band and you just like decent artwork and so just have a look at these tarot cards. They are great. And if you're a band, hopefully not in England, then yeah, definitely look up Black Sails Design, because he's got it going on.
Perfect. Paul, thank you very much for your time, and I'm hopefully going to try and get to one of your shows over in February. Might be in Basingstoke, might be in Brighton. So, yeah, hopefully catch you guys soon.
Yeah, man, let me know and we'll get you on the list.
Perfect.
Okay, so let me know where you want to go.
Yeah, brilliant. Cheers for that, Paul.
All right, no worries.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
So there you have it, another episode in the bag. 4 done, many more to come. Thanks again to Paul for taking the time to speak to me. It was really cool to hear about the band's concept with the tarot cards for the new record, and how much effort the band put into the aesthetics, not just of their music, but everything they put into, obviously, the design of the record, these little tarot cards, merch designs. It's just really cool that bands still think about those kind of things. As well as releasing their debut full-length, The Fall, which is coming out on Holy Roar Records on March 31st. They will be touring for pretty much on and off for the best part of 2.5 months, starting this weekend. So between February 11th and the 18th, they will be touring with Mammoth Weed, Wizard Bastard. God, that was a mouthful to say. Then from April 12th to 15th, they'll be on the road with Hark. And then finally on April 20th, they'll be doing a show with Bosk, having a short little break, and then joining them again on May 12th, 13th and 14th. If you want to keep up with everything to do with the band, find out what's going on with them, you can find them on Facebook, /OHHMS the band. On Twitter, it's @OHHMS the band. On Instagram, if you search OHHMS the band, it will come up. As always, you can get in touch with myself on Twitter, which is @just_an_insight, using the hashtag JAIPod, or you can drop me an email, which is just_an_insight@hotmail.co.uk. That pretty much wraps it up for this episode of the Just an Insight podcast. We're looking to do another roundtable wrestling discussion for WWE's Elimination Chamber event, which is coming up this Sunday, so that's more than likely going to be our next episode. But for now, thanks again for listening, and I will see you very soon.